Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the professor, and this is the moment of truth. You know, there's no tool like an old tool. It's just a fact that a lot of folks are living in a land of make-believe. But reality always has a way of spoiling the party. Just this week, the head of the Congressional Black Talkers, Joyce Beatty, found herself getting into a little tete-a-tete with just a run-of-the-mill Republican white male. Apparently what was happening was they were trying to get on board the Capitol Hill train, and Joyce Beatty had her COVID mask on. Meanwhile, this anonymous white representative did not. She told him that he needs to put on his mask before boarding the train. Why, there's even a sign. And this anonymous White House representative Republican poked her in the back and told her just get on the train. And when she told him not to touch her, he responded, "Kiss my..." Well, I'm sure that you can read the screen. Now, Joyce Beatty, being the head of the Congressional Black Caucus, which is kind of like being the smartest kid on the short bus, what did she do under these circumstances? I know, she went running to Nigga Jim Clyburn, America's favorite sharecropper, and she told old Jim, "You need to do something about this man. This man assaulted me. He disrespected me. I don't know what the world's wrong. You need to do something." And Negro Jim said, "Stop sloganizing. Sloganizing kills. We need to focus on taking care of the American people and doing stuff that's important now, you hear?" Well, actually, that didn't happen at all. Joyce Beatty knew better than to go to the, as the white media calls him, most powerful black politician in D.C. Yeah, he's got so much power that whenever a member of the Congressional Black Talkers has been slighted or wronged, they don't even bother to go to him, because he's got all that power, don't you know? Joyce Beatty didn't bother to try to denounce this anonymous white Republican House member on the floor or anything else for that matter. Instead, she did what they always do. She immediately went running for the nearest white person that she thought had some stroke because she knows that she doesn't. That means that she went to Nancy Pelosi, for those of you who don't know, and it was Nancy Pelosi who in turn had to ask Kevin McCarthy, is there any chance you can get this guy to at least apologize? And at first the guy said, no, I ain't apologizing for nothing. But after some more nagging, the guy released the standard non-apology apology. But the point is, being the head of the Congressional Black Caucus doesn't mean anything when you wield no power. And when you make it very clear that you're only there to be a rubber stamp for whatever it is that Nancy Pelosi and the white Democratic hierarchy want, nobody's going to respect that. Republicans are going to regard you as the enemy, and Democrats are going to regard you as nothing more than an annoying child that they're forced to have to deal with from time to time. Neither one is going to look at you with anything resembling respect. Bootlicks always think that they can beg their way to power. They always think that they're somehow pulling some sort of master stroke, that they're outsmarting everyone else. And then they get reminded of what the reality is, and they're so shocked and surprised. When it should surprise no one. What does Joyce Beatty think is going to happen? She thinks anybody's going to be protesting on her behalf? Anyone going to be writing any angry letters to the anonymous white Republican House member? Nothing's going to happen. Well, as the head of the Congressional Black Talkers, maybe she'll put her head together with the rest of those empty noggins and they'll come up with something. Maybe not. Maybe this will be the end of it. Because even when you go by the Congressional Black Talkers' own website, why, you see a picture of the chair of the organization. Why, there's Representative Beatty herself with some nonsensical message, but right beneath her grinning mug, you see a message that tells you exactly what the CBC's priorities actually are. At Representative Beatty, as someone raised in a union family, I fully believe congressional staff have the right to organize their workplace and join. Now, of all the priorities that black folks have in this country, are the staff members of Congress being able to unionize? Where in the world would that rank on the list? Would it rank in the top 100? Would it rank in the top 500? But the CBC's front page goes from tone deaf to brain dead when you look beneath that, and you see, I don't know, are these supposed to be the planks of some sort of policy platform? Because if they are, the planks are rotted. Our power, our message. They're going to be redoubling their efforts to root out racism and federal policy in the White House and on federal property. Well, considering these clowns haven't done squat about racism anywhere, I'm not real sure what redoubling zero is supposed to give. And if you want to get rid of racism in the White House, you can start with that wrinkled old bigot Joe Biden and his professional side piece Kamala Harris. That'd be a good start. But next you got police accountability. What the hell has the Congressional Black Talkers done about holding police accountable? Because their idea of accountability is no punishment. And if you're not punishing the police, you're not holding them accountable. So what is their message about that? CBC works to build trust between police departments and the African American community. There's a big problem with that right off the bat. First of all, even if I believe this garbage, why the hell is it that they're putting African American community last? If you're going to be talking about the African American community, you might as well go ahead and say black in relation to anyone else. We're supposed to get top billing. And secondly, what the hell is this about build trust? The black community does not need to build trust with anyone. It is the police's job to build trust with us. They do not have to trust the black community, but considering the fact that they get our tax dollars, and the law is working to make sure that police, especially white police in particular, are given immunity from law, we're the ones who need to be reassured that they can be trusted. We don't need to reassure them of anything. We're not the ones who took an oath of any sort. They did. So that being the case, yeah, trust only needs to be a one-way street, but nowhere in here do I see anything about making sure the police are held accountable. Building trust is not accountability. Punishment is accountability. But the CBC is mum on that one. Next, I got the little message, CBC celebrates 50 years. That's a long time to be sitting on your behind. And finally, the American Rescue Plan. Oh man, there's all kinds of plans out there, aren't they? The Build Back Better Plan, the Lift Every Voice Plan, American Rescue Plan. I thought they were the Congressional Black Caucus. Why am I seeing an American Rescue Plan? Where the hell is the African American Rescue Plan? Because when you look at the Latino caucus, you don't see anything about any American Rescue Plan. It's the Latino Rescue Plan. And with the Asian American Pacific Islander caucus, they ain't talking about an American Rescue Plan. They're talking about an AAPI rescue plan. Everybody's specific about the rescue plan for them, except for the alleged black representatives on Capitol Hill. Those guys, on the other hand, well, we're trying to work for everyone. Unions and Americans and police departments and all. We're all for everyone. This is the danger of having a professional do-nothing organization who's supposed to be representing you. But I notice on the CBC's front page, they don't say anything about the disrespect that was shown to the leader of their organization. Oh, if Representative Beatty's going to call herself giving a welcome from the chair, she might as well go ahead and have a word about civility on Capitol Hill. But she knows that nobody's listening because nobody cares what she has to say. If I wanted to be undeservingly charitable toward them, the only thing I could say about the CBC is that they're a DC-based social club. And as you can see, not a very prestigious one. Why, they can't even get their own members to stick up for one another. This is what happens if you think you're going to beg your way to power. And it's not just professional do-nothings like Joyce Beatty who are finding out how it is to get backhanded by white supremacy. I posted for you on my Twitter page how Evelyn England, who worked as a receptionist at Alabama's, get this, first White House of the Confederacy, well, she resigned from her position, retired from it, whatever you want to call it, and she's now filing a racial discrimination complaint after she was suspended last month. You heard me right. This woman happened to be a receptionist at a Confederate museum in Alabama. And the thing is, apparently she asked for the job. Now, she was on the job for 12 years. She's age 62. That means that she's been there since she was age 50. And as she puts it, I'm in a unique position because whites don't really want me here and blacks don't want to come here. Now, I know that for a lot of you, it's going to be irresistible to make the jokes, and I'll leave the humor to the comments section. But the point that I want to make about this is you got black folks who are deliberately putting themselves into positions where they're around a bunch of white supremacists, bunch of bigots. I mean, for God's sake, you spend 12 years working at a literal shrine to a slave owner who dedicated his life to preserving black people being held in bondage. As the article puts it, near the gift shop, they actually got a gift shop in a museum for a Confederate traitor. A framed article describes Jefferson Davis as an American patriot who accomplished, quote, one of the most amazing feats in history by keeping the North at bay for 4 long years. Now, considering the fact that this scumbag led an insurrection geared toward destroying the American government and putting an end to the United States. What kind of patriot is that? This guy wanted to break away from the United States. That would be like saying the founders of the U.S. were great British patriots. And as for that second part about one of the most amazing feats in history, keeping the North at bay for 4 long years, do you know how many wars the United States has been kept at bay for longer than that? The Korean War ended in a stalemate after about 5 years. Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, for God's sake, podunk countries that the illiterate hillbillies in Alabama couldn't find on a map if you pointed them to it. These are countries that actually had where the U.S. wasn't just held at bay for 4 years, where the U.S. actually had to leave without a victory. And yet they're trying to call a bunch of slave-owning inbreds who got their butts kicked for 4 years, calling that one of the most amazing feats in history. Well, if the only thing you know about history begins and ends with the Confederacy, well, I guess it makes sense you would think that. But on the other hand, if you actually read a history book instead of wiping your behind with the pages, you would know better. But then again, what do you expect? For these guys here, they're trying to literally live in the 19th century. I guess what I'm trying to say is that too many of us put ourselves in the trick bag. Now, while it would be easy to pile on to Evelyn England, Lord knows she's certainly given plenty of material to do it with, I'm not going to do that, though I am going to speak to the essential truth that both Evelyn England and Joyce Beatty suffer from the exact same delusion, this unshakable faith in the inherent goodness of these white supremacists. I mean, you can make excuses for just about anything if you try hard enough. Bootlicks live in a world of make-believe. They become suicidally aspirational, and white power will feed that delusion. They'll hold out false hope like a carrot that you'll never be allowed to actually get no matter how hard you run. There are some black folks who have resigned themselves to the idea that basically being the occasional or even frequent punching bags for this or that bigot is just their lot, and well, as long as they feel as if they didn't get run out of the room, somehow to them that counts as a win. And this dysfunction is particularly prevalent among the older set. I mean, for God's sake, this Evelyn England woman was 50 years old, 50 for God's sake, when she's trying to figure out how do I work at a Confederate museum. I'm sure the working conditions are going to be just fine. But my problem is, even if this wasn't just basically a taxpayer-supported clavern, how the world do you go to work every day when you are surrounded by the trappings of the Confederacy that's trying to pay honor and tribute to a bunch of slave-owning, degenerate, inbred traitors? And apparently for 12 years, you're figuring as long as they're giving a paycheck, you'll be fine. I'm not saying that Alabama has the most or the greatest employment opportunities for black folks, especially once you hit the 50 mark. But what I am saying is surely Mrs. England could have done better than this. But as we've seen with Joyce Beatty, even if you get all the way to the United States Congress, why, you can still be brought in for some abuse by the very people who you're supposed to have as your peers there. This is the reason why black folks need to get comfortable with the idea of pushing these white supremacists around. Black folks need to get comfortable with making these bigots and racists uncomfortable. They need to know that when we walk in the room, it is already known that we're not going to be disrespected because we make some examples out of people when they do. But we have to understand that the Joyce Beattys, and to a lesser degree the Evelyn Englands, they're not trying to figure out how to bully white supremacy, and that's what we should be doing. Black empowerment is going to be about bullying the white supremacists. The white supremacists are not going to discover religion. We're not going to shame them into civilized behavior. They're going to have our size 10 foot up their size 1 behinds. Every day they must be reminded that black empowerment is in charge and that it is completely and thoroughly unapologetic about exercising power, complete power over them. If you think they're hollering now simply because a few black folks are making some demands, you can only imagine the screeching, wailing, and caterwauling that's going to come when we actually put some real pain on these white supremacists, when we've actually got some real power. That doesn't appeal to the Joyce Beattys or the Evelyn Englands. They're trying to find a comfortable job that they can get under these white supremacists with a minimum of harassment and abuse. But Evelyn England stands as proof that why, you can be a black person working at a Confederate museum, And you can be just the most nice and courteous that you want to be. These white supremacists, they're not going to respect you for that. They're going to have contempt for you for that. Because they know what they would do if they went to a museum celebrating black people who held their ancestors in bondage and continue to oppress and abuse and mistreat them to this present day. You better believe if Evelyn England had been a white woman working at a Black History Museum, if she was a white woman working at any museum dealing with any aspect of black history or black culture, you know full well she'd practically be running the joint. And it definitely wouldn't have taken her 12 years to come up with some sort of racial discrimination suit. She'd have been on that one a hell of a lot sooner than that. But one thing's for sure, she wouldn't have been mistreated. Hell, she would have practically been the de facto manager of the place, even as a receptionist. But Evelyn England and Joyce Beatty are nothing more than cautionary tales. One happens to be an example of what happens when you have no power. The other one's an example of what happens when you've decided bootlicking is more important than power. And, at the risk of seeming messy, if you have people who truly aren't interested in being able to wield the power to punish those who mistreat them, then how much sympathy are we supposed to have when they're mistreated? It's an honest question. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Nicole Chappelle, Jermaine Morstan, Alexandria Victor, Vashon Hurst, and Tony Black. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.